Something is happening to you right now. Something you don't quite understand. You feel like you're not the same person anymore, like something inside you is dying. And that's scary. Terribly scary. Eckhart Tolle calls this the death of the ego. And he says it's the most important and the most painful process you can go through in this life. But here's what no one tells you. The death of the ego isn't a one-time event. It's a process that can last for months, even years. And during that process, you're going to feel lost, confused, like you're losing it. Today, I'm going to reveal the 6 signs that indicate you're going through an ego death. And I'm going to explain why what you're experiencing isn't a crisis. It's a transformation. The first sign is perhaps the most frightening. You no longer know who you are. Your whole life, you had an identity. You knew what you liked, what you hated, what you wanted. You had strong opinions, solid beliefs, a well-defined personality. But now, all of that seems to dissolve. You look in the mirror, and you no longer recognize the person staring back at you. Not physically, but internally. The things that defined you no longer define you. Your ambitions seem empty. Your beliefs seem arbitrary. Even your name sounds strange, like it belongs to someone else. Tolle explains that this is the first sign of ego death. The ego is essentially a mental construct, a collection of identifications with your name, your story, your possessions, your opinions, your social roles. When the ego begins to die, these identifications loosen, and you find yourself in an identity vacuum, a space where you're no longer defined by anything external. This is terrifying for most people, because we've been conditioned to believe that we are our identity. Without it, we think we're nothing. But Tolle says it's exactly the opposite. Without the egoic identity, you're finally free to discover what you really are, the pure awareness that observes everything, including the ego itself. If you're experiencing this sign right now, know that it's normal. You're not losing your mind. You're losing something much more superficial, a false identity that you've carried your whole life, without even knowing it was false. The second sign of ego death is the collapse of your motivations. Before, you knew what you wanted. You had goals, dreams, ambitions. You woke up in the morning with a reason to fight. But now, all of that seems hollow. You look at your old goals, and you wonder why they mattered so much. Money, success, recognition. It all seems absurd now. And this isn't depression, at least not in the clinical sense, because it's not that you can't pursue these things. It's that you no longer want to. Something in you has seen through the illusion, has seen that these pursuits were motivated by the ego, by the need to feel like someone, to prove your worth, to be validated. And now that you see this and you can't pretend anymore, you can't get excited about things that no longer truly excite you. Tolle says this is a crucial moment in the process because the ego desperately tries to find a new motivation, a new goal to pursue, a new story to tell. But if you resist this temptation, if you accept the motivational void without trying to fill it immediately, something new can emerge. A motivation that doesn't come from the ego, a motivation that comes from life itself, from presence, from the simple act of being alive and aware. This motivation is different. It doesn't need results to be satisfied. It finds its joy in the action itself, in the present moment, not in an imagined future. But before you get there, you have to cross the desert of the absence of motivation, and that's where many people get lost, because they don't understand what's happening. The third sign is perhaps the most emotionally painful. Your relationships are changing radically. Some people who were close to you suddenly become strangers. You no longer know what to say to them. Conversations that flowed naturally become forced and empty. And it's not that they've changed, it's you who has changed. You're no longer on the same wavelength. The ego games you used to play together, no longer interest you. Complaining, gossiping, subtle competitions, dramas, all of that now tires you instead of entertaining you. Some people will sense this change in you, and they will react, sometimes with hostility, sometimes with confusion, sometimes by walking away. Tolle explains that the ego loves the company of other egos. It feeds on egoic interactions, conflict and comparisons, validations. When your ego begins to die, you become less interesting to the egos of others, and they become less interesting to you. This is a period of great loneliness. You may feel misunderstood, rejected, like you no longer belong anywhere. But this solitude is necessary. It creates the space for new relationships. Relationships based on presence rather than ego games. Relationships where you can be truly yourself, where you no longer need to play a role. These relationships will come, but not right away. First, you must learn to be alone, to find the company of your own presence, to no longer depend on others to feel complete. The fourth sign of ego death is the emergence of old pain. It's like something inside you has opened an old box that you closed a long time ago. And now, everything you had hidden rises to the surface. Painful memories, emotions you thought you had overcome, traumas you had buried. Tolle calls this the pain body. It's the accumulation of all the unfelt emotions of your life, and sometimes of past lives. According to some traditions, when the ego begins to die, it loses its ability to keep these emotions suppressed, and they emerge, sometimes with a devastating force. You may find yourself crying for no apparent reason, feeling an ancient anger, a deep sadness, a primal fear. It's disorienting, because these emotions, they don't seem connected to your current life. They feel like they're coming from somewhere else, from a distant past. But here's what Eckhart Tolle teaches about this process. These emotions need to be felt in order to be released. As long as they remain buried, they continue to control you unconsciously. Ego death forces you to confront everything you've avoided. It's painful, absolutely. But it's also liberating, like shedding an old skin. Each emotion you allow to pass through you without resistance lightens you of a weight you didn't even know you were carrying. The fifth sign is subtle, but profound. You begin to perceive the illusion of time. Before, you lived in time. You regretted the past. You anticipated the future. You planned. You worried. You daydreamed. The present moment was just a passing point, a means to get somewhere else, a stepping stone. But now, something changes. You have moments where time seems to stop, where the past and the future disappear, where only the present moment exists. These moments can be brief at first, a few seconds, a few minutes, but they are profoundly different from your usual experience in where, like glimpses behind the curtain. In these moments, you are no longer a person with a story. You are simply consciousness, pure presence, nameless, storyless, problemless. Eckhart Tolle says that this is a glimpse of what you really are, a glimpse of the natural state that the ego hides. And once you've tasted this state, even briefly, you can't forget it. You know now that there is something beyond the mind, something beyond time. It's both liberating and disorienting, because you begin to see how much your life was dominated by psychological time, how much you were never really present, and you can't live the way you did before. You can no longer lose yourself completely in the stories of the mind. A part of you always remains anchored in the present, observing, conscious. The sixth sign is perhaps the most paradoxical. You begin to feel both more vulnerable and more powerful. More vulnerable because the ego's defenses are crumbling. You can no longer hide behind your masks, behind your roles, behind your opinions. You feel naked, exposed, without protection, like a baby bird. But at the same time, you discover a strength you didn't know you had, a strength that doesn't come from the ego. That doesn't depend on circumstances. It's the strength of consciousness itself, the strength of that which cannot be harmed, because it's not a thing. That can be attacked. It's like trying to grasp smoke. Eckhart Tolle often talks about this strength. He says it becomes accessible. When we stop identifying with the ego, when we stop defending, what doesn't need to be defended? You can now be hurt without being destroyed. You can be criticized without collapsing. You can lose without losing yourself. Because you begin to realize that what you really are cannot be touched by circumstances. Circumstances touch the ego, the personal story, but not the consciousness that observes it all. Now that you know the 6 signs, let me tell you about what happens during this process and why it's so difficult. Ego death is not a death in the usual sense. Nothing truly dies. What dies is an illusion. The illusion that you are your thoughts, your emotions, your story. But this illusion has been with you for so long. Dies that it seems real, more real than everything else. And when it begins to dissolve, it can feel as if you're really dying, like the ground is giving way beneath you. Eckhart Tolle recounts his own experience of ego death. That night, when he was on the verge of suicide, when he could no longer live with himself, and when something happened. A separation occurred between him and himself, between the I who was suffering and something larger that observed that suffering. And in that separation, the ego lost its grip. It didn't disappear completely, but it lost its absolute power. It became transparent. This process can happen suddenly, as it did for Eckhart Tolle, or gradually, over months and years, but the result is the same: a fundamental decentering, a shift from the I who thinks to the I who observes. Here's what you need to understand. If you're going through this process, firstly, it's not a disease, even if it can feel like one. Many people who go through an ego death think they have a psychological problem, and they consult therapists who try to bring them back to normal. But normal was complete identification with the ego. It was living in the illusion. That's not necessarily better. I'm not saying you shouldn't seek help, but seek help that understands this spiritual process, not help that tries to rebuild the ego, that you're in the process of transcending. Secondly, don't resist the process. Resistance makes everything harder. If you cling to your old identity, you prolong the suffering. If you try to go back to normal, you create an inner conflict and accept that something new is being born, even if you don't know what it is yet. Even if it's scary, embrace the unknown. Eckhart Tolle says that acceptance is key, not a passive, resigned acceptance, but an active and conscious acceptance, an openness to what is. Thirdly, take care of yourself during this process. Your body is also going through this transformation. You may need more sleep, more solitude, less stimulation. Listen to these needs. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. Your system needs resources to get through this profound change. Think of it like tending to a garden. Avoid drugs and alcohol during this period. They may seem to offer temporary relief, but they disrupt the natural process. They are a band-aid, not a cure. Also avoid people and situations that are too negative. Your system is more sensitive than usual. What would have barely touched you before can now affect you deeply. Fourthly, find sources of wisdom. You're not the first to go through this. Millions of people have experienced it before you, and some of them have left testimonies that can guide you. Eckhart Tolle's books are a good starting point. The Power of Now, A New Earth. These books speak directly to what you're experiencing. But there are also other teachers, other traditions, like mindfulness practices, or even finding solace in nature. Find what resonates with you, what helps you understand and accept this process. Maybe you find comfort in the words of Pema Chodron or the teachings of Alan Watts. Fifthly, be patient. This process takes time. It cannot be accelerated. It has its own wisdom. The seasons change at their own pace. So too does your inner landscape, its own rhythm. There will be days when you feel better, days when you catch glimpses of clarity, moments of profound peace. And there will be days when everything seems to be falling apart again, when you feel more lost than ever, when you doubt the entire process. That's normal. That's the natural ebb and flow of transformation. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's like the seasons changing. Sometimes it feels like winter will last forever, but spring always returns. Don't judge your progress by your tough days. Judge it by the overall trend, by the direction you're heading. Think of it like hiking a mountain. Some days are easier than others, but the important thing is you're still moving up. Now I want to talk about what exists on the other side of this process, because there is another side, and it is magnificent. On the other side of ego death, there's a freedom you've never known, a peace that doesn't depend on anything, a joy that needs no reason. It's like Dorothy stepping out of the black and white world into the vibrant colors of Oz. It's not that you become someone else, it's that you discover who you've always been. Underneath the layers of ego identification, it's like peeling away the layers of an onion to reveal the true core. Eckhart Tolle describes this state in different ways. He speaks of presence, of consciousness, of being, of a peace that surpasses all understanding, a sense of just being that resonates with something deep within you, like hearing the echo of your own soul. But words can't truly describe it, because it's not an experience in the usual sense. It's more like the space in which all experiences happen. You no longer need to become someone. You already are. You no longer need to arrive somewhere. You're already there. You no longer need to prove your worth. Your worth is inherent. It can't be increased or diminished by anything. You are simply put enough. This realization changes everything. Even if outwardly your life might seem the same. You might still have a job, relationships, responsibilities. But your relationship with all of that changes radically. You're no longer identified with those things. You do them. But you're not what you do. You have them. But you're not what you have. You play roles. But you're not those roles. You might be a parent, an employee, a friend, but underneath it all, you're just you. And this freedom allows you to be more effective, more creative, more authentic, because you're no longer burdened by the fears and desires of the ego. You can simply act, simply be, simply live. You're like a surfer riding the wave of life instead of being pulled under by the current. Let me tell you an analogy that Eckhart Tolle often uses. Imagine you've played a role in a play for so long that you've forgotten it's a role. You truly think you are that character. Their problems are your problems. Their fears are your fears. And then one day something happens. You remember that you're not the character. You're the actor. The character continues to exist, but it no longer has power over you. You can play it without being lost in it. Like Jim Carrey realizing he's not just the characters he plays, but a conscious being experiencing life. That's what happens in ego death. You remember that you're not the character you've played your whole life. You're something much vaster, much freer, much more real. Now, here's what I want you to take away from all of this. If you recognize these 6 signs in yourself, don't panic. What you're experiencing has a name. It's ego death. And it's a natural process of spiritual evolution. You're not going crazy. You're becoming healthy. Maybe for the first time in your life. You're not getting lost. You're finding yourself, your true self, the one that existed before the ego took control. This process is difficult. There are no shortcuts. There's no magic pill. But it's worth it. Every moment of confusion, every moment of pain, every moment of emptiness, all of it is preparing you for something new, something you can't yet imagine. But that's waiting for you on the other side. It's like the caterpillar transforming into a butterfly, a process that might seem painful and disorienting, but ultimately leads to soaring to new heights. Eckhart Tolle often says that awakening isn't something you do, it's something that happens to you. When you're ready, when the ego has let go enough. Your job isn't to force the process. Your job is to not prevent it, to not resist, to not cling to what is dying. Accept, observe, allow, and trust that something wiser than your mind knows exactly what it's doing. Before we finish, I want to give you some concrete practices for navigating this process. The first practice is non-judgmental observation. When a difficult emotion emerges, when you feel lost or confused, instead of reacting, instead of judging, instead of trying to change what you're feeling, simply observe, as if you were a silent witness, without doing anything, without adding anything. Like Jon Kabat-Zinn teaches in his mindfulness practices, say to yourself internally, "This is what I'm feeling right now. This is what's happening," and let it be. This simple but profound practice allows you to create a space between you and your experiences, a space of consciousness, a space of freedom. The more you practice this, the more you realize that you are not your emotions. You are what observes them. The second practice is grounding in the body. During ego death, the mind can become very agitated, full of question, of doubts, of fears. The body is an anchor, a return to the present moment, because the body is always in the present. Only the mind lives in the past and the future, several times a day. Especially when you feel lost in your thoughts, bring your attention back to your body. Feel your hands, feel your feet, feel your breath, feel the vital energy flowing through you. Eckhart Tolle calls this sensing the inner body, and it's one of the most direct ways to get out of the mind and into presence. The third practice is silence, not just external silence, but internal silence. The silence between the thoughts. Take a few minutes each day to simply be in silence, without doing anything, without thinking anything, without expecting anything. At first, it will be difficult. The mind will continue to talk, but over time, spaces of silence will appear, spaces of pure peace. These spaces are glimpses of what you truly are, of consciousness unconditioned by the mind, of presence without content. It's like the Quaker concept of inner light, finding stillness within. The fourth practice is conscious gratitude. Even amidst the chaos of ego death, there are things for which you can be grateful. The simple fact of being alive, the simple fact of breathing, the beauty of a tree, the warmth of the sun. Gratitude takes you out of the ego, because the ego is always unsatisfied, always lacking, always wanting something else. When you're truly grateful, you're in the present. You appreciate what is, without wanting it to be different. As Melody Beattie often says, gratitude unlocks the fullness of life. The fifth practice is self-compassion. This process is difficult. There will be moments when you fail, moments when you fall back into old pattern, moments when you forget everything you thought you knew. Don't judge yourself for that. Don't criticize yourself. Treat yourself with the same compassion you would extend to a friend going through a difficult time. The ego loves to judge, to criticize, to compare. But consciousness doesn't judge. It simply observes, and with love, with acceptance. Learn to look at yourself through those eyes. The eyes of consciousness, the eyes of compassion. To conclude, I want to pose a question to you. Which of these 6 signs are you experiencing most intensely right now? Is it a loss of identity? You no longer know who you are. Is it the collapse of motivations? Nothing excites you like it used to. Is it a shift in your relationships? You feel disconnected from the people around you. Is it the emergence of old pains? Ancient emotions are surfacing. Is it the perception of the illusion of time? You're catching glimpses of pure presence. Or is it the paradox of vulnerability and strength? You feel exposed yet strangely solid. Whatever your answer may be, know that you are not alone. Thousands of people at this very moment are going through the same process, asking the same questions, feeling the same fears. You are part of a wave of awakening that is happening on this planet. It's no accident that you're here right now. It's no accident that you're going through this now. Something grand is happening within you and through you into the world. Trust the process, even when it hurts, even when it seems endless, even when you feel like you're regressing. Ego death isn't an ending, it's a beginning. The beginning of your true life. The life you were meant to live all along, and that life is waiting for you, patiently, on the other side of all of this. And remember, what's dying isn't you. It's only the illusion of what you thought you were. And on the other side of that death, there's a life that's truer, freer, more vibrant than anything you've ever known. It's waiting for you. If this video has helped you, share it with someone who might be going through the same process, without knowing what it is. Together, we can support each other through this transformation. And don't forget to subscribe for more teachings on the path of awakening. Next time, I'll talk about what happens after ego death, about the new life that emerges from the ashes of the old. It's like the phoenix rising. Until then, stay present, stay open, and remember that what's dying within you was never really you, just like Eckhart Tolle teaches.